Alright, this thing is on. And what's up everyone, sanjaeuchiha here, welcome back to the channel. And by popular, or requested by popular demand at least, you guys voted on me to actually do a video dedicated to, me talking about my thoughts on the additional pages for the final chapter of Attack on Titan, chapter 139. The final pages, or the additional pages, were recently leaked and then, I guess released on Scantillation websites, because the the official release of these additional pages, or the volume release for which would include chapter 139, isn't released until June 9. So hopefully these pages are real, hopefully, so I don't actually have to go back and actually do another correction video or update video, but it is what it is. But yeah, by popular demand, you guys voted for it and here it is. So chapter 139 of the Attack on Titan manga, specifically the additional pages, which has been met with heavy criticism left, right and center. It is literally the chapter that has divided the fandom. So let's see if I can actually divide up this my thoughts on this in multiple sections here, so you guys can get a decent picture of where I'm coming from start to finish, where 139 is concerned, but mainly the additional pages. So here we go. So guys, to be honest, before getting into the additional pages, or to be honest, even before the final chapter dropped, I was one of those persons who went into the final chapter saying that, yo, to be honest, Isayama needed, and this might have been an exaggeration on my part, at least 100 plus pages, or 100 pages at least, to make the final chapter worthwhile. At the time coming out of chapter 138, I was saying that, yo, Isayama the magazine really needs to give him at least some additional pages, if he even bar minimum an additional 20 to 30 pages, so that he could have fleshed out the final chapter as best as he potentially could, based on where 138 ended. And I'm not saying if he had 100 pages it would have been a perfect ending either way, but honestly, some of the stuff that I feel Isayama was trying to convey, it would have made it easier to actually digest, or it would have made it easier to bring the point across, essentially. Now, most of you who saw my final thoughts video on the Attack on Titan ending, or my live reaction to the final chapter, or my extensive community posts on the character of Eren in the the final season, or the final arcs of the manga, should know by now that I came out of the final chapter thinking that, yo, this I can see where everyone was coming from with the criticism, but it wasn't bad for me personally, but it wasn't good or great either. I came out of it saying, yo, this is like a 6.5 out of 10 ending. But to be honest, with these additional panels, pages, it's honestly dropped in ratings for me personally to a 5.5, even a 5 out of 10, if I'm being honest. The final chapter wasn't perfect, there are a lot of things that really needed to, it needed more screen time, more panel time, needed to be fleshed out a bit more. And when I heard news of additional pages, I was overjoyed, because I was saying, coming out to the final chapter, things like the conversation between Eren and Armin needed to be extended more to show, at least show the readers, so that they didn't really have to dig up a lot of stuff from earlier in the manga, his progression, his mindset, stuff like Mikasa and Ymir and the Titan Centipede. These are all things I felt we were actually going to get when it comes on to the final chapter, at least the additional pages. And when I heard it was only going to be 8 additional pages, I was like, oh boy. My hopes kind of died down a bit, but some were still there. But now, seeing these pages, honestly, it's all Isayama had to do was to really extend the conversation between Armin and Eren, and address some stuff with Mikasa and Ymir. God. But anyway, let's move on to the next section of the video. Alright, so one of the things coming out of the magazine version of 139 that I really appreciated about the ending was the fact that it was a somewhat realistic portrayal of, how you would imagine a story of Attack on Titan to end. The thing at the end of the day is, no matter what Eren did, even if he had actually, wiped out all of the world, or, whatever the case may be, any decision they would have made, there was no situation where their decisions were going to be like, the decision that actually ended war for all eternity. It wasn't going to be like a war or the rumbling to end all, human conflict. There was the whole message was that they could not necessarily stop human conflict, but at least Eren's actions still opened up an opportunity, opened up a path for his friends to actually bargain and negotiate peace for the world, or at least between Eldia and the rest of the world, even if it's only temporary, which we all obviously see in these additional pages. But for the most part, I actually appreciated that ending. It wasn't like, a case where, yeah, we defeat the bad guy just for argument's sake and, just peace worldwide for all eternity. Of course, no. It was a realistic portrayal. And even though when it comes on to this ending, these additional pages, it still, I would say, maintains that theme. And by extension, I can understand the criticism persons have had with the the additional pages. I feel like my problem with these additional pages is that, generally speaking, it reinforces one of the problems I had with, the magazine version of the ending, is that we still come out of it with more questions than answers. It leaves things too ambiguous at the end of the day, if I'm being quite honest. And it kind of feels like we kind of brush over story points, or, narrative points that are essential for us, the readers, to gain an appreciation and understanding of where Isayama is coming from. So most of my problems stem from that when it comes down to these additional pages. And, of course, these issues are issues that I had with the original edition of this ending. So by extension, having them reinforced with these additional pages, but, even worse, like, say, if I could rate those issues on a scale of 1 to 10, it was like a 8. And no, it's the additional pages in themselves make it like a 9 or 10. Hence why I say the rating for the entire chapter from me drops from like a 6.5 to like a 5.5, even a 5. So there's the thing, there's too much room for interpretation. And it's not that I mind when authors actually allow the reader to, try to read between the lines of what he was trying to say here, or, leave things up to interpretation. But when you leave so much up to interpretation, and most of the stuff you leave up to interpretation deals with the core or central elements that are relevant to the main things in your plot, it it degrades the quality, if I'm being quite honest. So yeah. All right, so now that I've got my pre-expectations going into, 139, and, my thoughts on when the additional pages were there, and just a general idea of what my problem is with these additional pages and 139 in general, just generally speaking, it's time to, break it apart piece by piece, page by page, in terms of the new content and, what makes the chapter, I would say, objectively speaking, well, I can't say are objectively speaking, worse than before. All right, screw up being objective. This is subjective. All right, so when I saw this now, right, as we see here, I actually like this because, as I said, one of the main issues when it comes on to, the previous edition of the ending was the fact that we didn't necessarily get much of Ymir. She was basically brushed under the rug, and she's on paper, no pun intended, she is one of the most important characters in the series. So to see Isayama basically just kind of skim over her in the previous edition of the ending was really not the best move. So I really appreciated getting something here, but it kind of leads me to my first debatable, somewhat ambiguous problem, where when I saw it, I'm saying, this image here with Ymir and her daughters, is this what actually happened? Did King Fritz actually die and Ymir not die? Or is this just a symbolic comparison between Mikasa's choice to kill Eren, and basically it being compared to, if Ymir had not protected King Fritz. Is it like comparing it to symbolically to say it's the same thing? Basically, if you were to put, Ymir in Mikasa's shoes, that's what would have happened. I mean, I would want to say the latter, because if it's the initial thing and this is what actually happened, it contradicts too much into the story, even into the whole Titan power system, because of course the whole idea was, Ymir died after 13 years after getting the power. So of course, if she didn't actually die here, it leaves too many questions, such as how did she die, who would have killed her, yada yada yada. So I would like to think it's the latter, and this is just like a symbolic comparison to, Mikasa killing Eren, Ymir, causing the king, not defending the king and causing him to die. So hopefully there's that. So yeah. So it's kind of like a 50-50 thing, but it more like it's the latter, because it would really contradict and break too much in the story and leave too much questions. But anyway, moving on. So that was at least appreciated. It kind of raised the reception for me when it comes on to Ymir at the end of the story. But it still doesn't fix the entire problem, because we needed much more than this when it comes on to Ymir. No. This part, no. We have who is well, it's safe to say we have Mikasa here, her child, Eren, at Eren's grave, and who we can only assume to be Jean. No, the problem with this is that, of course, Isayama doesn't confirm it's John. We don't know if it could be some other random guy. We don't know for a fact. That's the thing. But right now, as it stands, there's more there's more evidence to indicate that it's John than anybody else based on the hair. That's the thing. Even though it's not confirmed or explicitly stated, like, Isayama leaves it so open that the only thing that you're going to logically assume is that it's John. And the thing that makes it even worse, having this in, the final chapter in its full context with the additional pages, it's such a jarring change, a jarring jump from, learning that, Eren actually did love Mikasa, and of course, Mikasa, who's, loved him from almost day one, essentially. It's such a jar. There's no build up to it. And yes, we know John liked Mikasa, but there was no indication that that was still the case, in season 4, or for the longest while now, if I'm being quite honest. And then the thing is, it kind of degrades John's character. I'm not saying Isayama, given the time, couldn't have probably developed it and showcased how it led up to it, but the decision to have it here like this and not explicitly state what's going on, the logical assumption, fans are just going to assume that they're together and they got together. But the fact that Mikasa still wears the scarf, it feels like John would have gone with somebody who didn't really truly love him as much as, it just seems like it degrades John's character to me. So that's the thing. And then it kind of feels like Eren it kind of just shit on Eren here, honestly, to get with John. So yeah, I'm not much of a super pairings kind of guy, but the thing is, at the end of the day, it's a jarring addition to the story at this point, and without any context, without anything, fans are just going to, you can't fault anybody for assuming that, Mikasa got with John and had a baby. But at the same time, without any build up or flesh out, it's too sudden, it's too jarring, and it degrades both Eren and John's character, if you ask me, especially since Mikasa still has this scarf on. I'm not saying Mikasa couldn't have moved on, whatever, that's alright, but you gotta build up to that, man. Like, I think I would have been more content with her just adopting a child, and eventually put the scarf on them or put the scarf down or something like that. If you're gonna show her getting with John, you gotta build up to it. It's kind of like the Naruto Hinata situation all over again. So yeah, Now we see parties, getting, developed and all this jazz and blues, which is nice. Um, Based on the panel here, it's safe to say, this is at least probably like 50 years into the future. At least it does seem like Mikasa got old, and I'm not sure who all the characters here are, but at least one of them should be Mikasa. So yeah, there's that. We do eventually see that, Mikasa does seem to die after one final rules our trip to Eren's grave. She still has the scarf, so there's that. Now we jump to, I guess, one of the most controversial or highly criticized things about these additional panels, and it's the destruction of what it seems to be Shiganshina. And given that the buildings are, different from how they were in the last panel, it's safe to assume that this is probably like another 20 to 30 years. So it's safe to say by the time Shiganshina is destroyed, that, it's probably like 100 years since the rumbling at least, which I think is safe to assume. But no, the thing is, the problem with this, of course, first reading it, I would not fault anyone for thinking that, oh shit, so Eren was right. Eren was right. He should have just wiped out the remaining 20%. Eren died for no reason. He didn't accomplish anything. Like, instantly, that's what's going to jump out at anybody more than likely. So that's the thing. But what I'm saying is, again, it goes back to my main problem with these additional panels, where it's way too ambiguous. It's way too general, because you could say, okay, after 100 years, and more like the alliance's efforts, they probably managed to, bargain and broker peace with the rest of the world. We don't know the full context here. Is this the whole island that's getting bombed? Is it just Shiganshina? Are they bombing it for, revenge against them because of the rumbling? Did some other issue arise that caused the island to be bombed, whether it be resources, some other political tensions? We don't know. There's just no context. So because of there being no context, the logical assumption it must be for the rumbling, because if persons could still treat Eldians for what they did 2,000 years ago that badly, after 100 years, you would think maybe, just maybe, yeah, they're still pissed off at, 80% of the world being destroyed. But that's the thing, I don't know. We don't know. It's just ambiguous. I don't know. It could be anything. It could be for either or. So it just leaves it too open, if you ask me. Because the thing is, if the island or even Shiganshina is bombed for another reason, it would still ring home with the theme that, you can't stop conflict, and that's fine. But to have the island be destroyed here, or at least Shiganshina, without explicitly stating anything, the first logical thing that's going to come to your mind is that Eren was right, but he died for nothing. So yeah. But even if it is in retaliation for the rumbling, I will say he still managed to ensure his friends lived long lives, long, healthy lives, which is one of the objectives he wanted at the end of the day. So there's that. But all I'm saying, this is too open. These additional pages should have been much longer. So there's that. Now we move on to, naturally, with some random kid that probably looks like Mikasa or somebody in the ruins of Shiganshina. And of course, the final panel, of course, which is reminiscent of when Ymir actually found the tree that led to her, led her to the source of all living matter, and of course Titan powers and etc. and all that. Now, of course, again, it could be like a move by Isayama to reinforce the theme that there will always be conflict. Fine, but the logical thing that anybody is going to assume that the Titan powers are still going to be something that's still around. So that kind of diminishes Eren's efforts, because that was one of his other goals: kill all Titans. Now, again, this is something that's way too open, if you ask me, because is it that Titan powers are around still? Is it that Eren failed at another one of his objectives. um, is it that they kind of the series got shafted in favor for a sequel? I don't know. There's no dialogue. There's no nothing. It's just, I don't know, guys. I don't know. It's just too open. It's too open to too much headcanon. Like, you could apply almost anything to these additional pages if you ask me. If I'm being quite honest. Hold on. And then I think one of the next problems that seeing this adds is the fact that it reinforces the notion that the elements of the story, such as the Titan centipede and its connection with Ymir, and the full logistics or the full ins and outs of how the Titan powers actually work, or if the Titan centipede's powers or abilities could be extended to do other things outside of the whole Titan and the Paths realm, wasn't fully explored. It reinforces and reminds the reader of that issue, if you ask me. Now, this kind of reminds me of a problem I had with the final arc of Bleach, where things like Yuabak and the Soul King, while they were interesting, they were not fully explored, and these were elements that were central to the events of the arc. These are elements of the arc that, if explored, would have given the reader or the viewer a much better appreciation and investment in the story. So this essentially reminds me of that problem with the final arc of Bleach in the manga. And because of the lack of Isayama actually exploring those themes, or exploring the ins and outs of the Titan abilities, I'm not saying he had to make it... I'm not saying he had to fully explore it, because the mystery of some things in a story sometimes, leaving up to the imagination of the reader or viewer, it has a certain charm to it. So he could have... All I'm saying, I think the middle ground is he could have gone deeper in terms of the whole abilities of the Titan Centipede and whatever the case may be. Because without that, the only thing you're going to interpret from this is that the Titan powers are still alive and well, and that Eren's goal of eliminating the Titans from the world has it failed. So there's the thing. Granted, as I said, it still does fall in line with the theme that conflict will continue, which is fine. But as I said, despite the complaints and the criticisms that persons have, which I to a degree share, I think most of the problems stem from the fact that this final chapter of Attack on Titan should have been much longer, so that Isayama could have conveyed all he needed, could have possibly conveyed about the ins and outs of, you know, the ending, essentially. And that is where most, if not all, of the problems stem from when it comes on to the Attack on Titan finale. All these problems between more questions than answers, too ambiguous, too open to interpretation, and in a more specific degree, hinting that Eren might have failed at one of his goals, which is, you know, getting rid of Titans, and that Titan power still exists. I mean, leaving the destruction of Shiganshina or possibly an entire island ambiguous. John and Eren's character getting degraded by, you know, Mikasa's decision. Not necessarily Mikasa's decision to go with John, but it being just suddenly thrown in your face like this. I mean, it could be someone else other than John, but as I said, there's more evidence to indicate that's John than anybody else until further notice. You know what I mean? So, and even though there's more Ymir, it still wasn't enough, I feel, in terms of Ymir's character, but it is appreciated. So that's the thing. While the additional pages, I feel, still fall in line with the theme or the message Isayama was trying to convey, all problems just stem from the execution, and similar to the magazine edition, just not having enough time when it comes on to the final, well, not enough pages when it comes on to the Attack on Titan finale. This chapter should have been 100 pages. I'm convinced, more so than ever. So yeah, but anyway, those are my in-depth thoughts and analysis on the additional pages of chapter 139. Again, if I'm being honest, the first time I read it, I didn't know what to think. I went around a bunch of videos, forums, hear everyone had to say. I thought about it, tried to be objective about it, and I feel like I may have been objective. If I wasn't, you can let me know. This video is getting a bit long, so to say the least. So yeah. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. If you made it this far, let me know what you thought about my thoughts on Attack on Titan. To be honest, until we get further context, or if the anime fleshes out these additional stuff like it can possibly do, this chapter rating for me has fallen from a 6.5 to like a 5 to a 5.5, give or take. So I know a lot of persons would rate it like a probably even a 0 out of 10, but you know, it wasn't. I can't in good faith say it was a 0 out of 10. It's like a 5 out of 10 for me. So yeah. But anyway, thanks guys, respect, and of course the Boruto chapter drops tomorrow. I haven't decided yet if I'm just gonna do a review or a live reaction stream when I get home from work, but I guess you guys will know, obviously. So sanjaeuchiha, rate, comment, subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your night, and I'll see you in the next Attack on Titan video.